Hello everyone, Jayden here. When you're a Minion Rush expert like myself, there's only two things you don't properly understand: sex and difference of opinion. Now, that's most likely why when someone comes up to me and says, Jayden, I prefer Subway Surfers to Minion Rush, I stab them in the throat, bury them and hide all the evidence. Nobody will ever know. However, I decided to look more into it, because at the end of the day, not everybody will love Minion Rush quite as much as I do. As someone who only grew up with one of the games that I'm mentioning in today's video, I can't really have too much of an opinion on the other two, but I can on one of them. So when you say endless runners on mobile, there's four that come to mind to most people. The most obvious being Temple Run, then also Subway Surfers, Minion Rush, and Talking Tom Gold Run. I wasn't even aware of this one, I just googled the main ones and apparently that's a thing. I even found out that I played it on my channel a while ago, but honestly I've completely forgotten. That was a dark phase of my life. So without any further ado, let's get straight into the four endless runner games that most people are aware of. The first one being Temple Run. So Temple Run came out in 2011 and was developed by Imangi Studios. A strange name I must say, but I digress. Temple Run was the first of its kind and immediately took the App Store by absolute storm. Everybody was playing this. The game was very simple. It was quite similar to the endless runners that we know and love today, except it was different in the way that it had a totally different playstyle. It isn't like Subway Surfers and Minion Rush in the way that there's many obstacles, you can choose a path of which you avoid them. It's more so very linear, and honestly you can interpret that as a good or bad thing, it's entirely down to personal preference. The game was relatively simple and started out as just a passion project by a small studio, and it turned into something huge. Temple Run had an insane amount of sequels for reasons I can only assume are to do with money. The game absolutely blew up, and for a while there it was the most popular endless runner. In fact, for a good while it was the only endless runner. Pretty much everyone had this on their iPhones, and if you went onto a bus you would see people playing it, or if you accidentally walked in a toilet you'd probably see the dude having a shit playing Temple Run. It was everywhere. However, all that changed with the release of Subway Surfers. Developed by Cybo, Subway Surfers is very different to Temple Run in the way that it's much more broad. There's more obstacles to avoid, more costumes to unlock, and the game overall is a lot more colourful. Now this, in my opinion, or at least down to what I've seen in statistics, is the most popular endless runner game. There's absolutely no denying that. It's a very good game, it's quite addictive, and even I have found myself playing it a lot, despite the fact that I'm such an obvious Minion Rush god. Now, do I call myself a god? Nah. Even I have found myself playing it despite the fact that I'm obviously on Team Minion Rush. Speaking of which, let's get into Minion Rush. Minion Rush is basically Subway Surfers with minions. That's pretty much all that needs to be said. Nah, but in all seriousness though, Minion Rush is pretty different to Subway Surfers. There's such awesome things in Minion Rush that just don't exist in the other two games, such as events, multiplayer, and even a surprisingly dedicated community, of which I'm a part of. And then, of course, there's Talking Tom Gold Run, made by I don't even fucking know, and that one is okay. I suppose this one was more, you know, sort of aimed towards children, because at the end of the day, it's Talking Tom. You don't see a 40-year-old saying, hey, yo, you know what my favourite franchise is? Talking Tom! So with four games that are so similar, how could someone possibly form an opinion on which is the best? I mean, at the end of the day, they are all pretty much the exact same game. Well, here's some arguments for that. As those of you that have been on my channel for a while may know, Minion Rush is by far my favourite endless runner game, if not my favourite mobile game to ever exist. Now, I admit that love has sort of died down in the past few years due to the game's updates, but I've loved a mobile game more than I'm pretty sure anyone else has loved a mobile game before. Most people just pick up Minion Rush and be like, oh cool, it's Minions on iPhone, I can't wait to show this to my nephew. But I don't know, I just started playing it as a kid and I guess I still play it today. Now, there are perfectly valid reasons for this. First of all, this exact YouTube channel that you're watching this video on now. I started making Minion Rush videos a long time ago and they just started to do pretty well, and I continued doing it to this day and never gave up because, I don't know, it's fun. I think a lot of people have negative connotations toward Minion Rush because, well, it's Minions, nobody likes them anymore. I mean, let's face it, the Minions stopped being a trend the minute that Facebook moms stopped posting about them, which admittedly was a shame. They used to be quite funny, even though the ironic ones are pretty good nowadays. So then it begs the question, what attracted me towards Minion Rush so much compared to the other two games? Now, it's a very good question, but the answer is relatively simple. Minion Rush is bloody amazing, and everybody underrates it. Now, I know what you're thinking, Jayden, you're 17 years of age, why the hell are you playing Minion Rush? And I ask myself that question a lot when I cry myself to sleep every night. But Minion Rush has some very, very positive elements. Now, obviously, I'm going to be talking about the older version of the game here, since, as I've made clear in some of my more recent videos, I'm not a big fan of Minion Rush as it is today. With the release of the new Minions film, Despicable Me 3, Gameloft decided to add some pretty awesome stuff to Minion Rush, the first being special missions. Special missions were a feature exclusive to Minion Rush that hasn't been seen in Subway Surfers or Temple Run, or I guess the Tom one, because it's actually quite original. The basis of a special mission is similar to the Jelly Lab, which I'll get onto in a bit, where you essentially work through levels of tasks and try and reach the end. If you do reach the end, you unlock some pretty cool rewards that can be used to level your account up. It was also fun to add your friends and compete to get the highest score. Not to flex or anything, but I have the highest score in the world. But overall, Minion Rush was pretty fun. There's really nothing more to be said about it. So then why do people prefer Subway Surfers? The answer is so obvious, they just don't like Minions. And I can't blame them for that. Minions, they're really annoying and I hate them so much. No, but on a more serious note, why was Subway Surfers so much more successful than Minion Rush, considering that Minion Rush had a brand name on it, being Despicable Me, which at the time was a huge film franchise, compared to Subway Surfers that started out as its own original entity? Now, the answer to me is quite simple, and it's not because people hate Minions, it's because Subway Surfers came first. Subway Surfers really set the stage, as comparing it to Temple Run, it was a lot more innovative at its time. Of course, Temple Run came first, but Subway Surfers was the first one to kind of pass on its themes to Minion Rush and the Talking Tom game. The game was just addictive, there's not really much more to it than that. You know, you could easily go anywhere and find yourself playing it. I mean, pretty much everyone was playing it at school, like back when I was at secondary school when it first came out, so, I mean, there's not a lot more to be said than that. But of course, with Subway Surfers' success came the downfall of Temple Run. I just don't see many people playing Temple Run nowadays. Now, the one place you do see it is at Sainsbury's on the demo devices, and yet still people don't play it. I just don't know what happened to Temple Run. I do suppose it is just because of the success of the other 3 games, but Temple Run just ain't doing as good as it did back in the day. And that is a shame, because Temple Run is a good game. I do actually have it on my phone, and while I don't play it as much as Subway Surfers and Minion Rush, I do sometimes find myself reliving the good days. And that leads us on to my least favourite of the bunch, the Talking Tom Gold Run. Now, you may ask yourself, Jayden, considering you spent money on this game back in one of your older videos, why don't you like it? Because it's Talking Tom! Why is Talking Tom in an endless runner game? Look, I have nothing against Talking Tom, despite what it may seem. I genuinely don't mind it, you know? It might be a stupid mobile game where you talk to a cat and it repeats what you say in a higher pitched voice, which is a dumb idea, but hey, that's just my opinion. I just don't understand why they had to make it into an endless runner game. Now, the only reason they did it, quite clearly, was for money. And I suppose that's what I dislike most about the game. Now, obviously that is exactly what Minion Rush is, but Talking Tom Gold Run just isn't original. It doesn't bring anything on its own, really. Everything that's in that game is directly copied over from Minion Rush or Subway Surfers. And, you know, don't get me wrong, the graphics can be pretty cool at some points, you know, the animation toony style is pretty cool, but there's just not a whole lot here to discuss. It's just Minion Rush with Talking Tom, a bit like how Minion Rush is Subway Surfers with Minion Rush. So, sure, it might be hypocritical of me to be slandering Talking Tom so much when the Minion Rush game is pretty much Subway Surfers, but as I mentioned, Minion Rush actually had originality, whereas Talking Tom was just the same thing again. So therefore, which one is the best? Well, while you may expect me to say Minion Rush, in my opinion, it is Subway Surfers. Don't get me wrong, Minion Rush did a lot right, but Subway Surfers did it first, and at the end of the day, you've got to give credit where credit's due. Gameloft just copied the game. Now, there are a few more to discuss, I suppose, such as Paddington Run and the brand new Crash on the Run, but again, they're pretty much just the same thing as Minion Rush or Subway Surfers. There's not a whole lot that they added in those games. All of them now have some sort of premium or festival or battle pass where you can unlock items, but they copied that from Fortnite. So yeah, I suppose all in all, if it comes down to originality, Subway Surfers wins this one. But that's entirely debatable. You know, everyone can have a different opinion on this, and it's really not important in the grand scheme of things. All of these games will mean something to someone, so no matter what your opinion is, it's fine to have it, even if it is Talking Tom Gold Run. But if your favourite's Talking Tom Gold Run, you're a fucking idiot. After I'd finished editing this video, I realised How can I make this assumption without actually finding some evidence to back it up? There were no polls online, so I decided, let's go out and ask some people. Minion Rush or Subway Surfers?
Subway Surfers.
Minion Rush or Subway Surfers?
Subway Surfers.
Minion Rush or Subway Surfers?
Oh, it's definitely Minion Rush.
Yeah, Minion Rush or Subway Surfers?
Both.
Well, I don't know what to tell you guys. Apparently Minion Rush is the worst game ever. That sucks. Well, I suppose if we're going to be a fan of any game, it may as well be the worst game ever. I mean, considering no game's worse than Minion Rush. Ah!